Welcome to Cooking with Margie. Today we have a special guest with us. This is Danny Bock. He's coming from Boone, from Shipley Farms, and he's going to show us something really special today. Tell us all about it, Danny.
So I am, my official title is Chef and Culinary Director. So primarily I work with our wholesale customers. We sell beef to restaurants, and then we also have our own processing facility where we process under USDA inspection beef, pork, lamb, and goat. I think we have our first bison on the docket or schedule for coming up here soon. But we also do that for local farmers. It's not just all USDA inspected for retail or wholesale. We do work a lot with our local meat community in the way of helping process exempt freezer beef as well. So if you need somewhere to get your animals processed, come see us up there in Violet, North Carolina.
So is that USDA inspected and all?
It is, yes.
Wow, so that is just a great service.
Yep.
And yeah, good for folks to learn about that.
Thank you. Today we're going to do a chicken breakdown. In my family, we like to buy whole chickens. Use every part of it that we can. So I'm going to show you the different ways. We're going to do one whole chicken for multiple different uses, and I'll show you some good food storage ideas that we like to use. We're going to go high tech. I'm going to show you a food vacuum machine, and then we're going to go low tech and show you just some tricks with Ziploc bags that'll help you preserve your food better in the freezer. And then we're going to talk about some better ideas, and then we're going to break down another chicken for a bone-in fried chicken application, because it's summertime and everybody loves fried chicken. So
wow, that is a lot. And you know, with grocery prices the way they are right now, I mean, chicken is still really the most affordable protein.
It is.
And a good one.
And you know, from where we are, anytime we need some big civilization, we run down to Wilkesboro, and so we pass those chicken trucks on the Tyson plant all the time. So you know, it is a part of what we have on our side of the world. So spend a lot of time in the restaurant industry working with whole chickens, breaking them down. You get to use all the different parts. So we're going to talk a little bit about stock. We're going to make some ideas and show you some things to do with organs for your pets. I like to add that to my dog's pet food. And then we're going to show some different ideas and for the dark meat and the white meat. And then, like I said, we'll do the bone-in presentation for fried chicken.
So you can even save money on your pet food.
Yeah,
so,
by all means.
So this is exciting. So thank you for being here.
You're so welcome. So let's start a little bit with just food safety. One of the things you'll see me do pretty much anytime I'm working is I will have one hand clean and one hand for the protein. That's the way we like this, one of those little things we say to help teach. So right now this is our whole chicken right here. We're just going to jump right into it. Little bit of anatomy if we're going to do so. These are the breasts right here. Here's your wings that we're looking at. This is the leg part. And then you have two cavities on a whole chicken that you need to take a peek into. If you've ever done a whole turkey and you couldn't find those giblets, it's because you probably didn't look on the other side. So on a chicken, same sort of thing. Typically they don't pack anything in this cavity. However, it's always a good idea to look at it. We'll go over that when we get into a little bit more of the breakdown. But in here, what we have is the neck bone. You'll find lungs, liver, and heart inside of there. And then one of the other things you want to look around for is glands. Those, hopefully we don't see one. Sometimes they're left behind. It's part of every animal. There's nothing really wrong with it. It's just not as pleasant to eat. And so when we buy a boneless, skinless chicken breast, someone's already taken those parts out and removed them for you. This is just a kind of an overall if you're working with this kind of product right here. I like to set up my area with a couple things. I have different dishes to catch everything so that my surface stays clean and I can work with it. I transfer my chicken from the sink area. You know, these packages are always going to be full of juice, so I always recommend you open them in a sink and then have a plate ready to go to catch that. That way you're not dribbling chicken juice everywhere. And then we also want to make sure you got hand washing available. I got some paper towels, and then we brought some sanitizer. When we get to some of the cleanup stuff, I'll show you how you can use that as well. You don't have to spend a lot of money on really good big chemicals. A little bit of bleach and cold water goes a long way. So, been touching this one with both hands, so we're going to keep going. Before I start cutting, I'll show you how I'll wash my hands before that. This is what the neck bone looks like. In this one, we've got a little bit of this skin right over here. We're going to take that and remove that. This one is going to be my waist, and I'm going to have this pan. We're going to use this plate right here. We're going to utilize that one again for bone parts that we will roast and utilize later. Continuing in here, we can stand the little guy up, and this are just skin flaps. We're not going to do much with that right here. When we talked about glands, I don't know if you can zoom in or we can show it, but these are an example of these little tiny things. This is something we want to make sure we don't have in there. Those could quite possibly be kidneys. This is part of the heart, and then we don't have any lungs in here, or liver, excuse me. And then we're going to keep going. Look in here. This cavity right here is connected. If for whatever reason your chicken smells a little bit, if you just find it to be excessively slimy, there's no reason you can't rinse it off. It just becomes a little more slippery, and your chicken will now have a lot more chicken drippings everywhere. So this one's kind of nice and dry. We've been letting it air out on the plate for a minute. So I'm not necessarily going to rinse this off. I am going to wash my hands, and then we're going to start cutting. So whenever I'm doing protein breakdown like this, or chicken breakdown, I like to have one towel that is kind of been chicken-fied. This one is contaminated, so to say, so I'll just make sure that I've got my eyes on it. You know, when you're working at home, you don't want your wife or child or someone else to come grab this and use it for another application. So I always like to kind of keep my eyes on this. My ideal knife for breaking down whole chickens, this is about a 6-inch blade. You can do thinner, you can do a boning knife. This one is sort of a utility style knife. You know, it doesn't have to be super razor sharp. Chicken's pretty easy to cut through. The one thing you will be doing is we're going to cut through some of the joints. So you do want to kind of think about which edge of the parts of the knife you do go to do that. I'm going to start real quick by just taking these little tips right here. When you go to the joint, if you take and place the knife, I'm going to use the heel back here at the end of the knife. This part, so that this part kind of gets dulled up by the bone. But chicken bones are pretty soft. You saw that just goes right through. We're going to put that over there. Let me take my organs and do that. We'll do the same on this side. And now we'll start with the wings. Everybody loves chicken wings. Chicken wing prices have gone all over the place, and you can see them. Sometimes they're available, sometimes they're not. What we like to do at my house is we'll break down 5 or 6 of these over the course of a couple months, and then we'll have wing night because I've saved all these little wings. So again, we come over to the joint, we see where it's flexing and moving. We just take our knife and work it down. You don't have to do a lot of downward pressure. I just kind of work that joint and it comes right off, okay? We're going to do that again over here on this one. See, that one was much easier. So that comes off right there. The drumettes, these parts right here, we're going to leave that for right now. Now we're going to start working on the rest of the bird. This little bit of fat that's here at the bottom, you can go ahead and just trim this off. This is a byproduct. You can take chicken fat and render it down. You can take and deep fry that, and it makes nice crispy little, you know, if you were to dust this in flour, you can make some chicken lardons, little crispy chicken bits. That's some fancy French style cooking that not a lot of people go into a lot of effort for. But this, if you cook it down and take that fat, this is one of those additives you can put into your pet's food that is just some nice calories and a good source of things that'll make their coat a lot shinier and stuff like that. So now where we're at, we've got drumettes, we've got the legs, we've cleaned this up a little bit. The next cut we're going to do, we're just going to spend a moment to talk about some anatomy here. On the back side of the chicken, if I articulate and move this guy's leg around, you're going to see that basically here's where the bone terminates, right here. And then we come out to this part of the bone, the other part of the thigh bone. And when we articulate the chicken drum, you can feel a little indentation. So these are important parts to find. Don't be afraid to, you know, handle this while you're figuring out and learning. The first cut we're going to do on the leg is right here between the skin of the breast and the leg. I just take and draw the knife right here. We open that up. And so you should see down here into where the thigh meat is. You've got a little bit of skin tissue right here. There's no real meat right here, and this is where the rib cage of the chicken is. So I'm going to take this knife, I'm just going to cut down until basically right here above the chicken's hips. Now I've released this whole muscle group of the thigh and the drum. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put my finger right here on this hip joint. I'm going to pull up on this, and you're going to feel the bone pop out of joint. Once you've done that, this little bit of meat right here that we can see, we're going to take and wiggle our knife down. You'll feel a little bit of resistance as you're going down the hip socket. I've done this a bunch. I'm going to make it look easy, but don't be afraid. I messed up 100 chickens before I learned to do this great. We're not worried about a 100% perfect yield of getting every little ounce of meat off the bone. We're going to show you some tricks and things to do with that that'll help you make this something that's worthwhile as far as a time investment, because you know we got to get other things done, so we can't spend 2 hours doing this. So by going fast, it's okay if you leave a little bit behind, because we're going to do something else that's going to make that beautiful. So that's how that comes off right there. That's the whole leg part right here. Now we come and find this little joint where these move. You put your finger right there. If I start with the knife like this and just like the other, it goes right through the joint. So now we've separated it in. We've got our drum and we've got our thigh piece, okay? Dark meat, both of these. We're just going to take and reserve these over here. We're going to do this step one more time with this leg. Once again, I just draw that across. I bring the chicken over. This is that little bit I cut up towards his spine. Find this joint. I'm going to dislocate it. Some great noises coming out of this. Oh, this guy's backbone popped up a little bit. So there we are. We've moved that leg quarter. We can take and set this aside for a second. And now we're going to find this joint once again. You can feel the little dent. You're going to put your knife right there, and the joint separates real easily. So once again, we've got the drum and the thigh piece. So now let's come back over. We're going to finish the bird. It sits up still not right nice. That's one of the reasons we leave the drumettes on there, because they're way easier to remove once you've removed all the meat. It also helps stabilize the whole carcass while you're removing the breast. Now, underneath the breast, we want to think a little bit about the rib cage. It's basically a circular cage like this. The majority of the meat is up here on the top. It gets very thin as it comes down to here. And then one of the interesting pieces of anatomy of all your birds, turkeys, ducks, anything, geese that we would eat, there is a keel bone. That's what we refer to. A keel is a part of the boat, it sticks down below the rest of the hull. That's exactly what this little bone does with the rib cage. It allows, this is the big muscle that works the wings, so that we've got a sturdy attachment point for this muscle group, but it's a little wonky to cut around. So, first cut we do, I find that keel bone, I take the knife right in the middle, and I just locate that keel bone. I'm cutting down, but at the same time I'm sort of pushing against that keel bone. And that gives me a good yield and a nice cutting guide. I just draw it all the way down to that part. We're going to flip it around now. So I'm drawing again, come down to where it splits the whole carcass. Now, in here is your wishbone. This one is now attached right here. When you get these whole kit birds from the processors, in the course of removing the feathers and everything else and preparing them to this point, this guy has had his little wishbone broken. So that's why that came off real good. I'll show you how to remove that. But now we've got the whole carcass just like this. It's split all the way down to the bone. Now all we're going to do is just do a rolling cut to where we get as close to the ribs as we can. Take your time with this. This is where we're going to use the tip of the knife. And you're just going to draw it and follow the bone. We're not trying to do anything fast. And then when we get down to this, where now we've got all the joint of the shoulder and we've got a little bit of that wishbone in there, I'm going to take this and I'm going to bend it up so it exposes this joint. And if you look right where the bone is, you can just run your knife in there. A little bit of effort. You've separated now. This is the breast. Traditional French cooking, you'll find this called an airline chicken breast, where they leave this on so you get a really cute presentation. So when we're going to remove the drumette, we just want to grab it firmly at the bottom part and we're just going to cut around that. And so there is our chicken drumette for wing night. I'm going to put that back over here. And this is a skin-on chicken breast. Chicken tender, this is another little piece you can remove. That is this little muscle group. You can see I can literally just pull that apart. It's still attached right here. I'll take the knife and drag it along and clean that up. That's a tasty little morsel right there. We'll throw this in there for further processing. And then to clean up, like I said, this guy had his little, this is part of the wishbone. We're just going to take the knife, come right along. We're going to remove that. We'll put that in there with the rest of the bones that we're going to cook off. You got a little bit of cartilage right here in a vein. That is kind of gets chewy when we cook it. I just like to slide the knife tip under that, remove that little bit. Now this is a byproduct. You can choose to cook this skin on and get some nice crispy skin if you want to. You can trim it up and remove that. Once again, that skin is great for pets. This skin is pretty much halfway come off already from where we've been messing with it. So we're just going to finish cleaning that up and make a traditional boneless, skinless chicken breast. You can clean up these little bits of fat. You can leave that on there. Fat is flavor. We're just going to do our best to sort of replicate what you see in the grocery store. One of the challenges of cooking a chicken breast thoroughly is you got a thin side right here and a big fat side right over here. To make these cook more thoroughly in your pan, you can also take this chicken breast. I like to flip them over, so this is the bone side up. I'll take my knife and hold this flat as a cut guide. And now I can trim off this little bit. We're going to reserve that. And now I've got a chicken breast that's uniform in thickness and is going to cook better in the pan that way. You know, you can also, if you buy some of these larger chickens where they've got these monster huge chicken breast portions, you can further trim this down to make it a more ideal portion size. So there's that one. We're going to come over here and finish this breast. Once again, I come up against the keel bone. We come down. We do this side. Now I'm going to follow the rib cage. Here's that shoulder joint. We're going to flip this over again. Going to cut in, look for the bone. I'll separate the bone at the joint and then it just comes apart cleanly. Now, once again, there's the airline breast style. We can remove the tenderloin. Pull that over here. Let's clean up this area right here. This is one of those areas where if there was going to be a gland, usually up in the neck area of the chicken is where you'll find that. They'll look kind of like a white grape or green grapes, but smaller. That's what they would look like in appearance. This guy's already had all those removed. We're going to pull that chicken fat off right there, or excuse me, the skin. And there it is. We'll do the drumette. Doesn't have to be pretty. Put that guy over there. Flip this over. Here's the little bit of cartilage we talked about. Once again, I just stick the tip underneath there. Cut that. We're good to go. If we want to make it a little more uniform in thickness, we'll trim that off. Maybe we want to make a petite one for the children, or if you've got someone without a big appetite, you can clean these up and make it a little bit smaller, just however you want to trim those up. That's how I typically do so when I have one where I want to have a smaller breast portion. We would call that a cutlet technically because we've trimmed it so much. Put that over there. Now here's our carcass. Like I said, we like to use every part, so I'm going to reserve and use this for my chicken stock. The one thing we do want to do if we're going to make a chicken stock is you don't want a whole lot of fat in it. So chicken skin has a lot of large fat content, so what I want to do is just pinch right here in the middle. We're going to come over here and just run our knife under. All that skin comes off fairly easy. We'll reserve that. This little chunk down here, I don't know why it is called this. It is called the Pope's nose. We pull that off. That's not necessarily something, it's just a fatty little chunk of the tail. We always cut that off. Now, you're looking at this and you're like, man, there's a lot of good meat on there. Sure there is. We did that fairly quickly, and so we could spend a lot more time going through and cutting each one of these little things off You could use this for a soup application where you just take the whole thing and chuck it in a pot, and then after it's been boiling for a little while, all this meat comes off very easily. Or you can take this whole thing and you can roast it whole, and the amount of meat left on here is negligible, but what it is going to do is going to contribute to the flavor of your stock. So when I make rice in a restaurant setting, why does my rice taste better than yours? Because instead of using water to make my rice, I take my water and I cook it with a carcass like this after I've roasted it and made it caramelized brown. We put that in a pot of cold water, and we have some aromatic vegetables. That would be the onions, carrots, and celery. The final product on cooked this is what the carcass would look like at the ends. These are what I did these last night just for the sake of speed. But you know, we're just getting some good brown color on this. We're going to put the vegetables and all these bones in a pot with cold water, bring it up to a barely simmers. You don't want a rolling boil. 4 or 5 hours later, after that's reduced down and had some nice slow cook time, you're going to get some really, really good chicken stock. And I'll show you some tricks to that here after we finish processing the rest of this. So the butt of the onion, this part right here, you always leave that attached, right? So you take your half onions, and the way to quickly dice an onion and use whatever amounts you want, you've got the lines on the onions are like a radius. They, you know, think of like the little parts of a sun. And so we just cut down along that, and then your onion just falls apart into a perfect little dice. And so if you only need this much for a recipe, there you go. Now you can wrap that up, come back to it later and keep cutting. But when you got to dice a 50-pound bag of onions, you know.
You good learn.
Yeah. And then the other little part, you know, when you get down to this part where you didn't cut all the way through, you know, you can just work this around, and then you get a good rough chop. For stocks like what we're doing, it doesn't have to be pretty. You know, in some of those kitchens, you do have to do perfect 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. We call that Renoir. It's half the reason my hands are like arthritic now. But yeah, so that's
cool.
dicing an onion.
That's like watching a magician to me. That's cool.
Further processing. So the chicken breasts are ready to go. This is some trim. These 2 portions, that's about what you got. This is the full-size breast. This is the one that we cut up and trimmed. As you can see, I remember I took that one piece off to make it thinner and cook more uniformly. What are we going to do with all those pieces? Well, in my house, all these trim pieces that we're starting to acquire here, there's all kinds of stuff. We have grandma's chicken, vegetable, potato soup at our house. This is one of the things we put that in. We also do chicken enchiladas, where we take and we dice this up and we cook it with some black beans, a little bit of salsa, and some enchilada sauce. It's a real simple, quick, easy meal. You can do chicken stir fry with this. Any chicken application you want to, this is perfect for it. The dark meat, you know, it has a little bit different flavor. With the skin on, you know, this is a really affordable cut. You can buy these usually and save a whole lot more if you're buying just the thighs in the grocery store. If you're how to process a whole thigh, you know, you could roast this whole after you dust it with some spices and seasoning. But what we're going to do real quick is I'm going to show you a quick, easy way to debone it so that you utilize the majority of the meat. Here's the 2 ends of the bone, one here, one here. Skin side, we're going to go down on the cutting board, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a roll cut. I'm just going to start right here, and I'm going to get my knife and just push on that bone, and I'm just going to unroll that thigh until I have the bone fully removed. We got one little chunk of meat right here. I can take and pinch that. There we go. Here we are again, and now this is going into the bone pile. Now on this boneless thigh portion now, we've got some parts right here that are basically cartilage and tendon. It's this bright white. You will feel the difference in what it feels like. It doesn't feel like the soft tissue of the meat. We're just going to take that, cut that off quick. Another byproduct. Come over here. You got one little chunk that we can remove right there. And as for the skin, that's going to come right off. I'll use the back of my knife a lot of times to hold the chicken down, and then you should just be able to pull it right off. A little bit of cutting right here, and there's how we skin it. This little bit right here is some fat. If we're really calorie conscious, we can trim that off. But now you've got a nice little piece of boneless thigh. If I were going to make this ready for a meal, you just cut it. This is ready for a soup. This is ready for stir fry. I'm a big fan of the dark meat, so that one is, this is going to go into whichever recipe I want to. Now, the drum, we can do the same thing with the drum. I'm going to show you how to bone that out as well. For this, we got a lot of tendons right here where this skinny part is, and most of the meat is up here on this side. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this part down here. We're not worried about getting this part of the knife dull because we want this part to stay sharp. So I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to roll the bone, gently cutting through all those tendons. And if we want to do skin, you can take the skin off now is usually a good time. Comes right off. Again, I'm going to flip the knife over and just pull. If it's real slippery like you're seeing right now, that chicken rag that we're using that's already got chicken, it'll give you some more gription, a little more traction, the ability to get your hands on it. Now we've got skinned. What we can do here is you can do a couple ways. You can just cut down along the bone like this. I'm just using the bone as a cutting guide. I'm not really worried about how pretty this is because this application, I'm going to cut this up and put it in, another dish that doesn't necessarily require whole big pieces. I'm just going to dice this up further. You will see in here this little bit right here, these tendons. That's going to be super chewy chicken flavored bubble gum that we don't really want to eat. So we're going to pull that aside, put it over here. Here's another little chunk. Don't be afraid to cut that out. And there you go. Now you got that all used. But once again, we're not really going to worry a whole lot about how much we left on the bone because this is going to go in the stock and make our stock that much mo better, as we like to say. The other way you can do the drum, again, we're going to do this same cut right here where we cut through all these tendons. I'm going to pull the skin off. Comes all off in one piece. And then I can come down here and just cut straight along it, and we can do kind of a similar variation of the roll where I just rolled that bone out. You can get as detailed as you want to on this, or you can go fast. Because at my house, we're always trying to get somebody in the bath, somebody's got somewhere to be. So we kind of focus a little bit more on speed than attention to detail. And so that's enough cutting. Here, once again, this is some of those tendons. That's not necessarily an edible part. We'll cut those and trim those off, put them in our byproduct pile. If you cook this a whole lot more, the more you cook it, the more those tissues are going to break down and become tender and soft and chewable, but they're still not going to be exactly ideal. With the other thigh, we'll do this real quick. And see, this guy, he had a little broken leg already. So that happened in the course of his demise. So there's the other leg. This is the rest of the thigh. We'll cut out that little bit. Come over here, we got this white part. Just still get our skin on, so let's go ahead and remove that. Use the back of my knife to pin it down to the board. Pull that, and there you go. Trim a little bit of there. And you know, there's also some kind of fun things you can do with that thigh piece. You could take and stuff this and roll it, put a skewer through there. You know, there's a lot of kind of interesting recipes ideas once you've come to this junction that you could play with that little cut. So, that's pretty much it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about where we go from there. So, I'm going to wash my hands.